I found myself transported into a romance novel as the heir to a criminal empire. The female lead, Iris, the adopted daughter I had tormented endlessly, was now a ruthless enforcer in our organization. The illegitimate son stood before me, righteously declaring that he would protect her from my cruelty. Yet in the next moment, the cold-blooded woman pressed a blade against his throat. I solemnly proclaimed that I was crowning him the biggest fool of the year. Chapter 1. My arrival in this world came at a rather convenient moment in the story. My father had just assigned Iris, a fierce underground operative, to serve as my personal bodyguard. Though she accepted the assignment silently, I knew from having read the entire novel that she resented it deeply. The heroine admired strength and despised me. In her eyes, I was nothing more than a spoiled brat who understood business deals but knew nothing about true power. The original version of myself had looked down on her for being a woman in a combat role. He had made tormenting her his favorite pastime, which only deepened her disgust. Yet she endured every humiliation out of loyalty to my father, and this suffering twisted her personality into something darker and more withdrawn. That vulnerability gave the male lead his opening. The illegitimate son used her pain against me. But now that I occupied this body, I had no intention of letting him succeed. I sought out my father and proposed a simple challenge. I would fight the heroine in single combat. Whoever knocked the other to the ground would win, and the victor would decide everything. In the training arena, I stared expressionlessly at the cold-faced woman across from me and announced loudly that she should use her full strength. I had no intention of holding back simply because she was a woman. She narrowed her eyes slightly and wordlessly assumed a fighting stance. The match began. At first, she was full of contempt. But when all her attacks were effortlessly neutralized by me, she finally got serious. After I had played with her long enough, I shifted my weight and drove my fist straight into her midsection. The woman cried out from the pain, stumbled back several steps, and fell to the ground. She looked at me in shock, biting her lip hard. I raised an eyebrow, my voice cold. Iris, you lost. Chapter 2. From that moment forward, I became Iris's commanding officer. After that initial defeat, quite a few people challenged me from time to time, but all of them were ultimately defeated. After all, in my previous life I had been a champion martial artist. The results didn't surprise me in the slightest. But when Iris learned that I had once been seriously injured during a tournament, she couldn't help asking why I always fought so desperately. I glanced at her and answered seriously. I know you look down on me, and you're not the only one. Many people in the syndicate look down on me. They think I'm a spoiled rich kid who only knows how to talk big. The reason I give everything I have isn't just for you. I want everyone to see that my father's son is not worthless. She lowered her head, avoiding my gaze, her lips pressed tightly together. I'm sorry. I misjudged you before. But I waved my hand dismissively. What I need isn't an apology. I need loyalty. Iris froze for a moment. I met her eyes and said earnestly that there was only one thing she needed to remember. As long as she remained loyal to me, I would never fail her. As soon as I finished speaking, Iris lifted her gaze, not hesitating for even a second. Word by word, she answered that since she was my person now, she would follow me for the rest of her life. I looked at her and allowed myself a faint smile. Conquering a woman takes only a few steps. First, subdue her with strength. Then move her with sincerity. Who cares about my father? It's not like I take him that seriously. I'm just curious about one thing. Now that I've seized the advantage, what will the male lead do? Chapter 3. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. I was now a junior in college, yet I had already taken over part of my father's business operations. I had moved into an apartment closer to campus for convenience. Today, I was suddenly summoned home by a phone call from my father. Sitting in the car on the way back to the estate, I said casually that something interesting was going to happen today. Iris looked at me, full of confusion. I merely raised an eyebrow, not planning to explain. The heroine's male lead was about to make his entrance today. Let's see whether this plot can still be changed. If it can't, then I'll just have to eliminate the threat. After all, even if my identity is fake, the achievements I've worked so hard for over the years are not something I'll hand over to someone else. Walking into the estate, I immediately saw the men sitting beside my father. He was dressed formally, his gaze clear and innocent. The moment he saw me, he politely stood up. My father patted his shoulder, then looked at me with a warning in his eyes. His voice was cold as he introduced the newcomer. "Dylan, this is your younger brother, Victor. From now on, take good care of him." I frowned. Victor. The name practically screamed Victor and heir. So my father really valued him. I smiled indifferently, walked up to Victor, and the next second I raised my fist and punched him squarely in the face. Everyone's expression changed instantly. My father immediately stepped in front of Victor, furious as he roared at me, demanding to know what I thought I was doing. Victor's face twisted from the impact. He held his nose as blood flowed uncontrollably, making him look utterly miserable. But even like that, he still stopped my father, insisting he was fine. If I didn't already know about the ruthless ambitions he hid so well, I might have been fooled too. I lifted my head and stared at my father expressionless, my voice cold. "Dad, it's one thing to hide an illegitimate child outside, but bringing him home. Isn't that a little too insulting to me?" My father was livid. He slammed the table hard, accusing me of rebellion. Iris stood beside me unafraid as she faced her adoptive father. Seeing this, my father's face darkened even further. I chuckled and waved my hand, and only then did Iris carefully retreat behind me. I continued. "Besides, since you've brought the bastard home, how could you leave his mother outside?" As I spoke, I slowly approached Elder Santiago, one of the gang's senior members and my father's right-hand man. I slapped a thick stack of photos onto a woman's face and said with a smile that she had been having an affair with my father for years, and her child was already as old as I was. "Tell me, does Elder Santiago know about this?" Chapter 4. The photos scattered all over the floor, various intimate poses between a man and a woman, leaving everyone stunned. The woman's face turned deathly pale. She stumbled backward repeatedly and with one misstep fell directly onto the ground. But the next second, Elder Santiago grabbed her by the hair and slapped her 3 times in a row. Her face swelled instantly, yet she was still trying to defend herself, insisting the photos were fake. But when Victor saw her getting hit, he panicked and blurted out instinctively, "Mom." That sealed everything. I laughed freely. Well. Even your son admitted it. Seeing the situation explode, my father tried to intervene and stop this disaster. But Elder Santiago, blinded by rage, ended up fighting with him directly. The entire hall descended into chaos. I watched the scene coldly, but a faint smile tugged at my lips. "Iris, we're leaving." Iris nodded. But just as we reached the door, someone blocked our path. Victor glared at me and shouted that this was all my doing. Then he turned to Iris. His eyes were full of sincerity and desperation. He grabbed Iris's wrist and declared that he wouldn't let this scumbag hurt her again. He was here to save her. But the moment his words fell, Iris pressed a knife straight against his neck. Victor froze, his expression completely shocked. His face went pale as if he simply couldn't understand any of this. I looked him directly in the eyes and said with a smile that if he provoked her, he should wonder whether he still wanted to live. Then I made a solemn announcement. "Brother, I hereby crown you the biggest clown of the year." I never imagined Victor would be stupid enough to provoke her right in front of me. Did he really think Iris would go with him? Besides, all these years I have never mistreated Iris. What saving was he even talking about? Unless he was still living inside the original storyline. Thinking of that, a hint of wicked amusement flashed across my eyes. This game just got a lot more interesting. Chapter 5. In the end, the matter fizzled out. I didn't know what my father promised Elder Santiago, but Elder Santiago actually swallowed his anger and tolerated this affair. My father even went all out and hosted a grand banquet to announce Victor's identity. As for the woman, my father certainly wasn't stupid enough to bring her home. He might like her, but the thing he loved most was still his reputation. He would never let the world know he was the kind of man who had been having an affair with a subordinate's wife for years. And since Elder Santiago only forgave my father because of mutual interests, the only person he could vent his anger on was the woman. In the banquet hall, Iris sat beside me and placed several photos on the coffee table. She said that my father had sent her abroad. In the photos, the woman was reluctantly saying goodbye to my father. She was wrapped tightly from head to toe, but the terrifying bruises on her skin were still visible. She even needed someone to support her while she walked. I sighed. Looks like Elder Santiago didn't hold back at all. Setting down my glass, I said coolly that her son was now a member of the family and would be one of the legitimate heirs. She spent years scheming for exactly this. So why would she leave so willingly? What did my father promise her? Iris rested her cheek on one hand as she replied that my father promised her he would bring her back in a few years. But privately, he ordered that she must never be allowed to return to the country again. She casually picked up my glass, took a sip, then pretended to realize it wasn't hers and gently placed it back down. I looked at her and she blinked innocently at me, her expression pure. But the lipstick mark on the rim of the glass, along with the faint blush on her cheeks, was far too obvious. I smiled slightly. Just then, a hearty voice sounded behind us. "Brother, Iris, what are you two talking about? You look so happy." I turned around and saw my father and Victor both dressed in luxurious formal attire. Victor's eyes were glued to Iris, burning with desire. Having something of mine be coveted by someone else displeased me, though I still smiled on the surface and said we were talking about the woman. Seeing his face stiffen, I let my gaze drift between him and my father. With a tone of regret, I said that Victor should know she had been sent away and would never come back. Victor forced a smile, speaking with practiced humility. That was father's decision. I didn't know. I raised an eyebrow and exchanged a glance with Iris. Looks like Victor did know his mother would never be allowed to return. So their so-called mother-son bond was shallow to the extreme. Victor's gaze returned to Iris and he spoke earnestly. "Dad, I just returned home and haven't established myself yet. I'm short on people. How about letting my sister follow me?" The smile instantly vanished from my face. My expression darkened in a heartbeat. Chapter 6. My father was probably trying to cultivate Victor, or maybe he'd long wanted to weaken my influence, so he readily ordered that from now on, Iris would follow Victor. Victor was overjoyed. As he spoke, he stepped forward to take Iris away. But I raised my hand and blocked him, my voice icy. "I don't agree." My father froze. I stared at him coldly, my voice turning even harder as I enunciated each word. "Iris belongs to me. I need her to protect me." My father frowned and cursed angrily, insisting that with my skills, I didn't need protection. At this point, it was unclear whether she was my bodyguard or I was hers. I replied that I liked it this way. It was none of his business. My father was speechless. I added that this was not up for discussion. I refused to yield even an inch. Someone I had trained for years was not going to become someone else's tool. Besides, after all these years, Iris was essentially my right hand. Losing her wouldn't kill me, but it would definitely cripple me, and I don't tolerate that. Especially not giving her to Victor. And beyond all that, if I handed Iris over this time, the outside world would think I was spineless. Wouldn't that mean anyone could step on my dignity? I had zero interest in that. Seeing my father's furious darkening expression, Victor hurried to persuade me, saying that he knew I couldn't accept him, but this family was run by father. How could I be so unreasonable? Besides, his gaze fell on Iris and he continued, "Even if I looked down on Iris, she was still a person, not an object. We should respect her own wishes." "Look down on Iris?" I glanced at Iris, who had her eyes lowered, and suddenly laughed. "Fine." Victor hadn't expected me to relent. He shot me a look, then eagerly stepped in front of Iris. His voice was devout and gentle. "Iris, would you be willing to follow me? I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you." His eyes were full of tenderness, as if she were a priceless treasure. Unfortunately for him, Iris took a step back in disgust and said she only wanted to follow me. Victor clearly hadn't expected Iris to reject him. His expression froze instantly. My father, seeing this, glared angrily and demanded to know how Iris dared defy his order. He told her not to forget who saved her. But Iris didn't hesitate. Word by word, she repeated that she would only follow me. My father exploded, slamming a wine glass onto the floor. The glass shattered instantly, shards scattering everywhere. I pulled Iris toward me, but she still got hurt. Seeing the cut on her arm, my vision darkened with fury. I walked up to my father. His expression was cold, but mine didn't waver in the slightest. My voice dropped low. "Don't push your luck." His face twisted with rage. His hand trembled as he pointed at me, accusing us of rebelling. "This is my family," he insisted. I let out a cold laugh. My father really was getting old. He could no longer see reality clearly. After his affair was exposed and his foolish banquet, he had already stirred up a lot of resentment. And besides, compared to an aging muddle-headed ruler, everyone preferred a sharp, capable leader. Otherwise, how could I speak with such confidence? I smiled faintly. "How could we rebel? I'm your most filial son." Then I gave him a sideways glance and added lightly, "At least before you anger me beyond repair." Chapter 7. My father looked around and realized that the subordinates who once followed him were now merely watching coldly. None of them intended to help him. His face shifted between several shades of fury, and in a fit of rage, he turned and stormed off. Victor glared at me viciously, hatred burning so intensely in his eyes he looked as if he wanted to tear me apart alive. But I smiled cheerfully back at him. When Iris stepped forward and took my arm, Victor's expression twisted faintly. Only then did he turn and leave. On the way home, Iris frowned slightly, her gaze lowered as she said that Victor was strange. Leaning back in my seat with my eyes closed, I opened them upon hearing her words. "How so?" Iris tilted her head, thinking for a moment before answering. "He's completely convinced you treat me terribly. He secretly approached me many times trying to persuade me to leave you." I smiled faintly, not surprised by her perceptiveness. Maybe he really does know something. I closed my eyes again, enjoying Iris's massage as I thought about how interesting this was. It seems Victor truly isn't the male lead from the book I read. So is he reborn? Or did he transmigrate too? And very soon, the answer revealed itself. Victor sought me out on his own. Looking at me as if victory were already his, he smiled and said that he knew I wasn't from this world. "Let me tell you, I'm the real male lead. Iris belongs to me. No matter what you do, it's pointless. And you're no match for me." I replied calmly. "A match?" Setting down my coffee cup, I said lightly that he wasn't even qualified to be my opponent. Victor's expression shifted instantly. He gritted his teeth and said I shouldn't be so smug. I was only ahead for now. But since he was here, he would set everything right. Did I really think someone like me could change the ending? I looked at him coldly, saying nothing. Seeing that I still didn't take him seriously, hatred twisted across Victor's face. He snapped that I should just wait. He would take back everything he lost. I blinked and smiled gently. "I'll be watching." So Victor was a transmigrator. At the start, he probably assumed he was naturally the protagonist and didn't take me seriously at all. But now that he'd come yelling in front of me, it meant he had finally realized that the plot had changed and that my influence was no longer something he could shake. So then, what will he do next? How exciting. Chapter 8. In the year I graduated, I successfully entered the corporation as the general manager. But in reality, I had already been the true controller of the corporation for a long time. The underworld was no longer a viable path. It was through years of my planning that the syndicate was cleansed and transformed into a publicly listed company. Now the corporation was thriving. The former gang leaders had become shareholders and earned enormous profits every year, legally, without the constant fear and danger of the past. Naturally, I received their full support. As for my father, he was still the CEO in title, but he had long become an empty shell. At the shareholders' meeting, the shareholders proposed, for the 5th time, the transfer of leadership. Watching my father's dim, defeated expression, I curled my lips slightly. As expected, after the meeting he came to me. With Victor by his side. He said in a low, heavy voice that he was willing to step down from the corporation, but he had one condition. Without even lifting my head, I replied coolly that if it was about arranging a position for Victor, he should forget it. He glared at me and shouted, asking if I must destroy Victor completely. He was my brother. I set down my pen and finally looked at them. My tone was indifferent as I said that he really knew how to joke. "I don't even acknowledge you. Why would I acknowledge some illegitimate child?" My father grew even more furious. I slammed the pen onto the table, cutting him off. My voice rose sharply. Address me by my title. I continued. The only reason I still call you Dad is because I don't want to make things too ugly and ruin our family's reputation. But you should know better than anyone that the moment you sent assassins after me again and again, any father-son relationship between us ended. Both their expressions changed instantly. Victor looked at me in shock. How did you know? I ignored him completely and kept my eyes locked on my father. My voice was sharp as a blade. Father, the family is no longer something you can control single-handedly. You can choose to leave with dignity, or you can be thrown out in disgrace. I'll give you only one chance to choose. My father stared at me, both shocked and enraged. I didn't back down at all. After a long moment, his expression turned ashen and he silently exited the office. Victor quickly followed after him. Watching them leave, Iris narrowed her eyes. Her gaze, venomous like a snake's, locked onto their retreating figures. Her voice was icy as she said she could kill them. She should kill them. I stood and gently cupped her cheek. Seeing her face flush slightly, I smiled softly, none of the earlier fierceness visible. I said that death was far too easy for them. That's not what I want. If others don't offend me, I won't offend them. But since my father and Victor dared to provoke me again and again, dared to try to kill me, then they'd better be ready for me to crush them completely. Chapter 9. After that day, my father did not step down from the corporation. But I wasn't in a hurry. Because something far more interesting happened. Breaking news flooded the media. Stock market genius Victor bets big on biogenics. Investors rush to follow. Biogenics' market value skyrockets by billions in 10 hours. Experts warn of investment risks and advise against blindly following trends. Victor's name was trending at the very top of the hot search. For the past 6 months, he had been frequently appearing online. He repeatedly placed large stock investments, and every single time he won big. Word spread quickly. He became the legendary stock market prodigy who never lost. The most anticipated investment genius among retail traders. Many experts advised the public not to follow the trend blindly, but their warnings had little effect. I opened the comment section, and unsurprisingly it was full of worship for Victor and ridicule toward the experts. Some comments read that the useless experts were wrong last time. My buddy made tens of millions overnight. Those trash experts probably secretly followed the trend themselves. With a genius like Victor hitting 100% success, only an idiot would listen to fake experts. Many reporters rushed to interview Victor. One reporter asked if he had anything to say about all the investors who had followed his lead. Victor smiled confidently, brimming with certainty. Thank you for your trust. The results this time will definitely satisfy everyone even more. His attitude of absolute victory sent his fanbase into a frenzy. I turned off the television, smiling in satisfaction. I do like his confidence. Biogenics does indeed have huge growth potential. This investment truly is guaranteed profit. Iris lifted her gaze to me and asked if we should release the information we gathered. I waved my hand lazily. Not yet. We'll wait for when it becomes even more fun. Chapter 10. And as expected, after one market cycle, Biogenics' stock surged dramatically, becoming a massive dark horse. The investors who followed Victor earned huge profits, while those who didn't follow were beating their chests in regret. His reputation soared to its peak, even surpassing that of top-tier celebrities. Countless interview programs scrambled to invite Victor. During an interview, a reporter asked about his next investment target. Victor sighed helplessly and said that his brother once asked him who he'd bet on next. He didn't tell me, and I threatened to kick him out of the family unless he gave me the information. Instantly, the entire internet erupted with attacks against the corporation and against me. Shocking family scandal exposed. Eldest son Dylan has secretly seized control for years. Dylan threatened stock god Victor, forbidding him from influencing investors and tries to kick him out of the family. I didn't tell the PR department to suppress anything. Instead, I watched the rumors spread. I even actively agreed to a reporter interview. The reporter asked if I had anything to say about the online accusations. Did I threaten the stock god Victor to stop sharing his investment insights? I nodded. Yes, I did. She continued, asking if I was trying to monopolize the profits for myself. Monopolize? I shot her a sideways glance and let out a cold, disdainful laugh. What a joke. Since when has this family ever cared about such pocket change? The reporter froze, her face flushing with embarrassment. After all, the corporation was a listed company. Why would it care about a few million? I looked around the room, my expression serious. The stock market is unstable. Investments require caution. When investors rush into a single stock in a frenzy, it disrupts market balance, and in severe cases it can even cause the market to crash. Do any of you want another economic bubble? The financial reporters looked at one another, unable to respond. I continued. In my view, blindly following trends is foolish. Believing anyone can guarantee profits and letting that belief drive herd behavior is even more foolish. As his older brother, and as a member of the market, I simply issued a warning. Take it or leave it. With that, I prepared to leave. But an entertainment reporter blocked my path anxiously, asking about the rumor that I'd stripped him of power. Why is there no position for Victor in the corporation? Isn't it because I maliciously expelled him? I turned back, faced the camera, and said with a contemptuous smirk. An illegitimate child. How could he possibly enter the corporation? A single sentence directly exposed Victor's true identity. It instantly enraged one of Victor's crazed fans in the crowd. Wielding a knife, the fan charged at me screaming not to slander their stock god brother. The next second, the person was slapped to the ground by Iris. Bodyguards swarmed forward, pinning the attacker to the floor. I didn't spare them a single glance. I simply left with Iris at my side. Chapter 11. After that interview, Victor's identity as an illegitimate child could no longer be hidden. The internet was filled with discussions. And right at this time, Victor placed another bet. Still on biogenics. Naturally, countless investors rushed in once again. Meanwhile, I ordered Iris to have the corporation release a statement cutting ties with him. When I looked up, I unintentionally spotted the bruise on Iris's cheek. I frowned. You're injured. Who did this? Iris instinctively turned her head away. It's fine. Just a minor injury. I took out the medical kit. Come here. She shook her head, embarrassed. Really, it's nothing. I pinched the bridge of my nose, my voice low and stern. I'll say this one last time. Come here. Only then did Iris obediently sit beside me. As I applied ointment, I asked if someone came to the company looking for trouble. She nodded, looking a bit aggrieved. Ever since the last attack, I had strengthened the security around the company. But crazed fans still occasionally showed up. Still, with your skills, how did you get hurt? Besides me, who could even land a hit on her? Iris lowered her head and whispered that she got distracted. Distracted? I asked, puzzled. She lifted her gaze to mine and said clearly, word by word, because she was thinking about me. Iris looked at me from such a close distance, her face slightly flushed, yet she didn't avoid me this time. I instantly understood. A faint smile curved my lips as I held the back of her head and kissed her. Holding Iris's trembling body in my arms, I repeated once more. Iris, remember never to betray me. Otherwise, I will kill you. Iris wrapped her arms around me tightly, her voice sincere. I will never betray you, master. I didn't answer, but the smile on my lips rose high. My heart finally settled. For a moment, I allowed myself to sink into this tenderness. Only after a while did I speak softly. In 3 days, release the information. I was running out of patience. This game was about to begin. Chapter 12. Rumors broke out that the heiress of biogenics had an ambiguous relationship with Victor. Many people began to suspect that the reason Victor kept betting on biogenics was because of romance. But even faster than the rumors came the news that Victor was going to propose to Elena, the heiress of a rising financial family. On the day of the proposal, I was invited to attend. I watched the extravagant proposal banquet with my own eyes. And I calmly observed Victor basking in his triumph. After he stepped down from the stage, Victor wrapped an arm around the heiress, stood in front of me, and said with a smug smile that even without Iris, he had already beaten me. The family was a rising star in the financial world, soaring rapidly. Marrying the heiress was naturally something to boast about. But to me, Iris never needed to be compared to anyone. I smiled slightly. Congratulations. Seeing my calm expression, Victor glanced at Iris with unwilling eyes. He said that Iris would regret this one day. But Iris didn't even spare him a glance. Victor gripped his wine glass so tightly it looked like it might shatter. Throughout the entire banquet, he busied himself trying to network with various CEOs and business tycoons, as if he intended to climb straight to the top in a single leap. He didn't notice the person standing in the shadows of the banquet hall, eyes full of hatred staring daggers at him. I glanced at Iris. She understood instantly and walked toward that person. Chapter 13. After Victor and Elena became engaged, Victor frequently appeared with Elena on various shows, flaunting their love. But during one live broadcast, a man suddenly barged into the studio with a group of people. Everyone on set was startled, and the security guards rushed forward, but they were quickly subdued by the intruders behind him. The entire studio fell into shock. The man scanned the room, locked his furious gaze on Victor and Elena, and stormed straight toward them. The moment he opened his mouth, he exploded. "You bastard. Daring to steal my woman. Today I'm crippling you. And you filthy liar. If I hadn't checked the cameras, I wouldn't have known you were wearing the wedding dress I bought you while lying on our marital bed with him. You scumbag couple, you still dare to flaunt your love." Victor and Elena's faces went stiff immediately. They tried to explain, but the men wouldn't hear a word. With a single command, his people grabbed both of them and delivered a merciless beating. The studio descended into total chaos. And this entire scene was being broadcast live, watched by millions in real time. It triggered a massive wave of discussion online. Watching the broadcast of the two fleeing in humiliation, I couldn't stop laughing. I commented that these people really are something else. The man causing the scene was Elena's former fiancé, Marcus. They had already arranged their wedding, but after Marcus's family ran into sudden misfortune, she abandoned him and cheated with Victor. Cheating wasn't enough. Because of Victor's preferences, she even avoided breaking off the engagement until she was clearly pregnant, only then canceling the wedding. I despise people like that. So I lent Marcus a hand, gave him some manpower. And clearly, he didn't disappoint me. That night, Victor called me. His voice was sharp and hysterical as he yelled that it was me. "It was me who set this up, wasn't it?" I replied calmly. "I set it up." I let out a cold laugh. "Have some shame. You two messed around on your own. What does it have to do with me?" On the other end, Victor roared that he was going to kill me. But instead of getting angry, I chuckled. My voice was cold as I said that he'd better hold on. Otherwise, without the main character, how is this show supposed to go on? Chapter 14. Victor's past scandals spread across the entire internet in an instant. His reputation became notorious overnight. In order to clear his name, Victor began placing investment bets even more frequently, hoping to use this method to regain the public's trust. At this point, all he could rely on was his knowledge of the future, gambling his entire future on it. I leisurely flipped through the documents in my hands. Unfortunately for him, this time he's bound to be disappointed. Chapter 15. Biogenics was exposed for conducting human experimentation, atrocious inhumane practices. Worse, they had cut corners on emergency medications, causing patients who bought them to suffer and die. Even their signature medical equipment was revealed to be cheaply made and dangerously low in quality. Once the news broke, Biogenics' stock plummeted instantly. Countless investors saw their entire fortunes turn into bubbles. Then the news directly criticized Victor for encouraging investors to follow his bets, suspecting him of betraying national interests. He was detained for investigation. Although nothing incriminating was found in the end, his reputation was completely ruined. He became a public enemy, especially to the investors who had blindly followed him. They wanted nothing more than to tear him apart alive. I originally thought Victor would be hiding at home, too afraid to show his face. But unexpectedly, he came to me on his own. His face was deathly pale, his eyes bloodshot, and he looked as though he had aged more than 10 years. "Dylan, this was your plan too?" I answered honestly. "Yes. It took quite some effort. Hatred flickered in his eyes, mixed with something complicated. Finally, he dropped to his knees before me. "Brother, why are you targeting me every step of the way? I already left the corporation. I'm not trying to fight you for anything anymore." I asked, "Is that so?" My tone indifferent. Kneeling before me, Victor nodded frantically. "Really? Just give me some money and let me go abroad. I'll never come back. Please, big brother." He raised his head, looking at me with desperate humility, as if I were his lifeline. Unfortunately for him, I wasn't. I was the devil who would take his life. I patted his cheek, studying his pathetic state, and suddenly let out a cold laugh. "If you really weren't trying to fight me, then why did you secretly contact our shareholders? Why did you push my father to speak for you? Why did you buy off my secretary to report my every move to you? Why did you steal confidential corporate documents?" His face turned even paler than paper. He trembled violently, whispering how I knew. "When did I find out?" I kicked him to the floor. "I knew from the very beginning, you idiot." I glared down at him from above. "Do you think I kicked my father out of power because of luck? It was ability." I leaned over him, voice cold enough to freeze blood, speaking each word clearly. The ability to generate greater profits. Chapter 16. Victor seemed completely stunned by the flood of information, his eyes blank and unfocused. I let out a cold laugh and mocked him. "This is the business world, not a child's game and certainly not some entertainment show. People don't care about rumors. What they care about is profit. And I can give them that. Tell me, why would they betray me and choose a useless man who can't even enter the corporation?" He glared at me, his expression twisted, finally voicing the confusion that had been eating him alive. "Then why did they agree?" I smiled. "Clown. They were playing with you, of course." My smile deepened as I added carelessly. "Otherwise, wouldn't life be unbearably boring?" His eyes turned bloodshot. He lunged at me like a madman, screaming that it was impossible. Impossible. He was the protagonist. How could he lose? But before he even touched me, my fist slammed into his abdomen. He screamed, collapsing onto the ground, curling up in pain. I stared at his pathetic state with cold eyes and chuckled lightly. There is no such thing as a born protagonist. In this world, only the winner becomes king. I ordered people to throw him out the door. Even from far away, his agonized cries could still be heard. But no one cared. His fiancée had already abandoned him after the family collapsed. My father had long given up on him as well. He had lost all value. Chapter 17. I watched Iris walk toward me from afar, and I stepped forward to pull her into my arms. I said softly that it was all over. When I first arrived in this world, I was alone. If I didn't change the script, I would inevitably follow the original plot, fall into ruin, become a bloody corpse, a disposable stepping stone for the so-called male lead. So I had no choice but to plan every step to seize greater power. And Iris, as the heroine, had originally been nothing more than a tool for me to use. But after years together, that initial calculation slowly became genuine emotion. I didn't know what the future would be, but I had never lied to her. If she ever betrayed me, I truly would eliminate her. Iris dove into my arms, hugging me tightly. She shook her head and said that it wasn't over. "Between us, there's more to come." I lowered my head and kissed her. I said yes, our life together. There are no predetermined protagonists. No matter the world, only the victor becomes king. That is the rule.